Hi everyone, I'm delighted today to be joined by Ellie Crowe, who's a certified coach for This Naked Mind, as am I. And she's joining today to talk about her story, about how she quit drinking and how she went on to become a coach, helping other people. Hi Ellie, thanks for joining me.
Hi, Sam. Thank you so much for having me here. It's so exciting 'cause I was in the January live alcohol experiment, just over a year ago, and you were one of the coaches. So you're a big part of my story. So I'm really honoured to be here. Thank you.
Oh, that's awesome. Yeah, and I've been watching you doing your lives this January, and it's just amazing to sort of see that transition. And
Yeah.
I guess a great place to start would be talking a little bit about what life was like when you were drinking and then how you sort of started to evaluate your relationship.
Yeah, sure. So the natural place for me to start really is when I was in my 30s and then getting to the point of having kids. So prior to that, I would have classified myself as a big social drinker. My drinking didn't look any different to anybody else's. And so when I've got three children. With my first, I think because pregnancy and heading into parenthood was so new, it really wasn't an issue for me to stop drinking for the pregnancy, and I just got on with it. I was so focused on this new exciting thing that I had going on. And it wasn't until Pearl, my eldest, when she was born, I then embarked on breastfeeding. And it's the first time I'd done it. So I'm going, well, hang on a minute. I've abstained from drinking for 9 months. And what, you're now telling me I need to abstain again? And I don't know how long I'm going to breastfeed her for. So how long does this go on for? So it wasn't a big deal really, but there was a snippet of, I felt like I was missing out a bit.
Yeah.
And then fast forward a bit, I then get to my second child, my little boy Chester, and postnatally, after I had him, it was a really different feeling. I don't know whether it's male hormones. I just felt so different and had a lot of volatility. And I battled with it for probably for about a year before I went to the doctor to ask for some help, because for me and my personality, going to the doctor and asking for help and possibly headed to, I knew they'd offer antidepressants, and
Yeah.
I didn't want to classify myself as depressed, and I didn't want to have to take antidepressants. So that kept me stuck for a while, and I didn't go and seek help when I probably should have done. So when I eventually went to the doctor, and I remember sitting in her office, and I had my two very little kids with me at the time, and I'm in floods of tears, struggling to hold it together. And just looking at these kids thinking they deserve more than me, that, I'm not a good enough mum for them, they deserve more. I was so desperate that when she then offers me antidepressants, there was no question, because I that to me felt like my rock bottom, like I had nothing else. And she diagnosed me with something called PMDD, which is premenstrual dysphoric disorder. And this characterizes itself as, like, if you imagine like a really extreme PMT or PMS, and it's
Right.
so like a cyclical thing. The majority of the month I'd feel fine, but then I'd have this surge of hormones at one particular part of the month, and it would just leave me. I didn't know myself. I didn't recognize myself. Lots of rage and anger, and it was a really, really horrible place to be, and a horrible place for my
Yeah, I
family
bet.
too. It was awful. Anybody that's had, I mean, PMS is bad, but anybody that's suffered with PMDD will know what I'm talking about. So the doctor prescribes me with antidepressants, and fortunately she also led me into cognitive behavioral therapy. So I went to see a CBT practitioner who was amazing. But the funny thing about this visit was she also, so as the tears are drying, she's asking me, well, how much do you drink? And I was in such a daze with the whole thing that I forgot that you're supposed to like half it and then
Yeah,
half
well,
it
you told her
again.
the
And
truth.
I told her the truth. Who does that? Who goes to the doctor and
No.
tells them the truth? So I did. And this poet, she's lovely, my GP, but she's an older lady, and she kind of looked mildly horrified as I told her how much wine I drank during the week. And it was kind of this funny thing of, I think I said something like, I probably have like, six a week or something. And she went, well, six glasses. And I said, oh, no, bottles. So it's this really sort of, it was probably the first time that I thought, oh, hang on a minute, that probably isn't really normal, or isn't right, isn't healthy. So I left her office, and I'm thinking, well, how do you cut down? Because that's my self-care. That's how I look after myself. That's how I hold it together. And so I then embark on this. So I've got the antidepressants, and they were fabulous, just in terms of taking the edge off and just allow me to get my head above water. So I felt like I was on an even keel. And then I went to see this CBT practitioner who was just unbelievable. In my first session with him, I tackled the lifelong anxiety I'd had and pretty much dealt with 90% of it. It was just the most amazing experience. And he was so good that I went on to tackle my lifelong spider phobia with him too.
Wow.
And I've tried everything. I've tried hypnosis, the lot. And this work was just incredible. So I saw him for about 6 months, was on the antidepressants for about 6 months. But the big thing that I also did was I got into yoga, and I really developed my yoga practice. And then I did some stuff around nutrition. So I was cleaning up my gut and getting rid of sugar and gluten and that sort of thing. So I got to this point where I felt the best that I've felt in years. I was just on a high, amazing. I was still drinking, but my drinking had reduced, I think naturally, because I was sort of invigorated and going out and doing all of these other things that I was interested in. So I'm feeling really good. And then I fall pregnant with my last little girl, Noah, and back into the pregnancy cycle. And I practiced yoga all through my pregnancy. But the thing that was slightly different was I missed drinking. I missed having a glass of wine. And it was that really hot summer that we had a couple of years ago. And I'm massively pregnant. And I had a big party to see all my friends, height of the summer in July before the baby came. And everyone's drinking. There's a paddling pool full of beers and wines and champagne. And I really sat there a bit miserable, feeling like I was missing out. And that was kind of different for me. So then the baby's born, and I had home birth, so I had her at home. And I'd been up labouring all through the night. She was born real early hours in the morning, like 5 o'clock in the morning, just as the sun's coming up. It was beautiful, just over there, actually.
Why do they not come in the afternoon? A sensible hour.
Yeah. Well, it was beautiful. It was because the sun's sort of rising over here. It was just this beautiful, magical experience.
Oh.
And so I then go back to the house, and I'm, resting and recovering. And so if you think about it as a day, I've been up for many, many hours. So by the time it's like 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock in the morning, to me, that's the afternoon. And my neighbour came to visit me to meet the baby. And she laughed as she came in the room. I think, what the hell is she laughing at? And I was sitting there on my nightstand, I had a chilled glass of my favourite wine sitting there, because that was my reward. And she's giggling at me because that was where my attention first went to after having this baby. I'm thinking, I don't see what's funny. I've worked really hard. I think I deserve that. But that's kind of how I saw it. I saw wine as a reward. It was that way to relax. And and so postnatally after her, here I go again, back with these big spikes of volatility, and it wasn't quite as bad as my son, which is why I think there's some male hormone bits in there, but it was bad enough that it was causing me discomfort and pain, and I felt like I was getting depressed again. And I'm doing all the stuff. So I've done the CBT. I even went back to my CBT practitioner. He said, I can't help you. He said, you're sleep deprived, you're adrenally fatigued, you need some help. And I can't come and babysit and do your washing for you. So that was a dead end.
You were still on the antidepressants at this point as well?
No. I'd stopped those. I'd only been on them for about 6 months initially. But I did go back to the doctor, and I explained what was going on. And I said, do I need antidepressants again? She said, no. She said you could try it, but it's just this monthly thing. And it was only for such a short period of the month. We're then talking about, is it perimenopause? How can we handle this hormonal change? I'm doing the yoga, all of the stuff, and nothing was quite right. So, but the interesting thing was, the one thing that I hadn't looked at was drinking. And steadily, so I've now got 3 kids. I've still got my business to run, financial pressure and stress, like we all have in our lives. And I was increasingly drinking for stress release. So I always remember, and this makes me quite sad to think about, but I'd be busy all day long and feel stressed and worn out and like I need that reward, I need that escape, I need that release at the end of the day. I put the kids to bed, and my little boy Chester's, you know, sort of 3 or 4 at the time, and he's got his little arm around me. Mummy, can you read me another story, and can you stay with me? And as a kid, I remember, you know, wanting that connection, that comfort at night to go to sleep. And I'm getting like irritated with him because I'm like, well, you know, this is my time. This is adult time now. I need to get downstairs, get my glass of wine so I can switch off from it all and escape and let go. So my choices were, I could sit with him for the extra story and feel really resentful, which is just awful. This is my little boy who just wants his mum, and I'm feeling frustrated and agitated. Or I could say, no, that's it. We've had our stories. Go down and have my glass of wine. And yes, for 20 minutes, I'd feel that release and I'd feel better. But then quite quickly that would change, and it would become self-loathing and feeling like a bad mum and guilt. And this was a cycle I was stuck in. And it really, it felt like, the best way I can describe it was, it felt like I was erasing myself bit by bit. So I'd lost interest in all the things. I was still doing yoga, but everything else had fallen by the wayside, lost interest in all of those things. And my life was just becoming really dull, really boring. And I felt massively discontented professionally. And that was getting to me because I'm a high achiever, I'm a go-getter. And I couldn't understand why I just couldn't do the things that I wanted to do. Where had my motivation gone? Why couldn't I? Where was my drive? Like I just couldn't fix it. I knew that I was capable of so much more and that life was about so much more, but it just felt like I was wasting it. I was constantly waiting for it to get better, and it wasn't getting better. And I took a trip to Vegas. This was the August of last year. Is that right? Last year. So I went to Vegas.
At the moment?
Oh no, hang on. No, it'd been the year before. Yeah, because I've gone a year alcohol free. So yeah, it was the year before. My 2 friends were getting married, and it was the first time I've been away from the kids. And it was hedonistic. It was back like being in my 20s, drinking like I did then. And I had a great time, don't get me wrong, but it kind of scared me a bit, you know, blacking out. The amount of alcohol I consumed was just, it was disgusting really. And I kind of thought, I'm 40, nearly 40, what am I doing? I've got kids at home. So when I got back, I decided, right, that's it, I'm done. I'm not drinking anymore. And that lasted about a week, and then it slowly creeps back in again. And so between that August and the December, I was in quite a painful place, but just didn't know, I didn't think that there was any other option than to be miserable not drinking. And then just by complete chance, I came across this Naked Mind. And so there was a paper called 6 Vital Things to Know About Moderation. And that spoke to me because that's what I was failing to do. I'd say to myself, oh, I'll only drink on weekends. And then the weekend would start on a Thursday, finish on a Tuesday, and then, oh, screw it, I'll start again next week. It was all that sort of stuff. So when I read this paper, and it's got the science of how alcohol works and why moderation is so tricky, it just blew me away. It completely blew me away. And pretty much in one fell swoop, it took away my desire to drink. And I couldn't believe it, but I was kind of left in this space of, well, how do you then live? Like, you know, yes, I don't want it anymore, but how do you live alcohol free? You know, who does that? So within about a week, I'm then on Annie's mailing list. So Annie then sends out an invitation to the live alcohol experiment. And it really, I was so interested in doing it. But my first thought was $47. And then I thought, well, hang on, I'm going to do dry January. I'm going to save so much money than I would by, you know, not drinking. So I put in my $47. And because I'd done that, and this is why it's so important to invest, because I put that money in, I did all the pre-work, I did the mindful drinking exercise, I showed up to every live, I listened and watched all of the videos, I did the journaling. I wanted to get my $47 worth, and bloody hell did I do that.
Sounds like you did.
Yeah, I did. And this is the crazy thing. When I look back on it, it completely changed my life. And that I was questioning paying $47 for it.
Yeah, some people pay £10,000 for that or whatever.
Exactly. I got kind of halfway through that alcohol experiment, and I just saw the power that it had for vast change, but also really fast change, not just for myself, but the participants that were there. And I knew that I wanted to be able to pay it forward, and I wanted to be able to help other mums that were stuck just like me, feeling that same way, like they're erasing themselves, that they've got so much more potential, but they're not reaching it. And so I knew I wanted to be a coach. And, this is how the universe then puts things together for you. Annie then opened up her first online coach training program. And so my discontent professionally and starting to understand that, and then this opportunity came together just at the right time.
Perfect.
So I then trained to be a certified This Naked Mind coach, and it was fabulous. It was so interesting. But the bit that I really like, I love the science. I love understanding why and how. And one of the things that really I found fascinating was all around the neurotransmitters. Our biochemistry, our nervous system response. So after I trained with Annie, I then went on to train with Jolene Park. Yeah. So I did her grey area drinking training, right, which is just fascinating. And so what that's allowed me to do is build up a coaching practice which works in two ways at the same time. So it's all of the top-down stuff, working on the cognitive side of things, working on beliefs and thoughts, because ultimately how we think affects how we feel, affects how we behave, affects the results that we get. So there's that element to it. But then also we drink because we want to feel a certain kind of way. And so if you then remove drinking, you need to replace it with something else to be able to get that feeling. So you can pull different levers. If you're deficient in serotonin or dopamine or GABA, you can do different things, eat different things, have different supplements that are going to help you to boost those neurotransmitters. So I like working in that way, because it's when you can get somebody to feel better quickly, they then are often more capable of dealing with the cognitive work. Because as we know, it's not just like my surface area was that I was drinking for stress release and relaxation. But when you then remove drinking, all of this stuff starts coming to the surface. Yeah, and actually, what was underneath it for me was a load of stuff related to my childhood, stuff that I had forgotten. There was a whole lot of trauma there. I thought trauma was just about battlefields and really extreme, horrible things. And so I learned a lot about trauma, and I did my own ACE score, the adverse childhood experience. And it frightened me. It frightened me how high my ACE score was. And then, of course, I've then got this barrel of stuff to deal with. And sort of sitting aside to that was I lost my father when I was 20, so he was only 48. And what I realised in the last year was that I'd never dealt with that. I'd never processed that emotion. Consciously and subconsciously, I just drank it away. So last December, I was approaching the 20th anniversary of his death. And I had a couple of really quite dark, sad days where I had to process all this stuff. And I'm thinking, like, how can I process 20 years worth of stuff in a short space of time? I just didn't expect it to happen, but I did. And that was through having the clarity of being alcohol free. Yeah, so when I then, yes, absolutely. And so when I got to the anniversary of his death, it was a sad day, and I felt, I did cry. But I could remember him and the experiences and things that we shared together. I could remember that in a very, very different way. And I could think about him joyfully. And so the release that I've had, being able to deal with that, that's 20 years that's been under there.
It's amazing. So, our stories are so similar around the sort of past trauma. And I think there's two parts to when you sort of peel back that layer of the onion, what you find on the inside. And I often work with people who say, I had a perfect childhood, it was all great. And actually, I thought mine was okay until I started really looking at it and realizing that my mum was just emotionally absent. She just wasn't, she was there in body and she put meals in front of me and clothes on me, but she wasn't there emotionally, and she wasn't equipped for the job that she had taken on. Doesn't mean she doesn't love me, but she just couldn't do the job, and that caused me issues. And then I did experience like sexual abuse from an older boy when I was like 13 years old. So that was trauma. And I just parked it at the back of my mind. I'd never, just like you said, I'd never even gone there. I didn't even want to look at it. And I would just drink. And it wasn't until I stopped drinking that I was able to, like you said, kind of process that and almost grieve a sort of lost childhood.
Yeah, and that's what one of the things for all of my clients, I get them to go back to that little person that they were. You know, like I've got my pictures of me as a little kid on my desk, because when you can look at that little person, when I was drinking, I couldn't care enough about myself. Like I didn't have compassion towards myself. I didn't have warmth towards myself. The whole idea of self-love was, you know, don't really get that. Yeah. And self-care was wine, that was it. And so coming to the other side of like removing alcohol, the bit that I had to cultivate, and it's, you know, lifelong work is that compassion towards yourself. Because if you can appreciate yourself and love yourself, just be, not for the things that you achieve necessarily, but just who you are, it unlocks so many things. And so I'll get my clients to go and get a little picture of themselves. And to, you know, we know about inner child work, how powerful that can be, particularly where you have abandonment in your history. So I get them to do that work and journaling and digging into what does that little person, what is that little person looking for? You know, you can't, you can't not look back at a little picture of yourself, and you know, you can't be horrible to that little person in that picture who had so many dreams and hopes, and it is quite sad, you know, like say you grieve for that childhood that you didn't have. Some of the things that have happened, you know, it's hard not to feel like that shouldn't have happened, but if you can accept what's gone and process it, the relief of being able to move on and what that then opens up in your life is just incredible.
You just hit the nail on the head there, because the word that was in my mind was acceptance. And I think that is the big key in all of it. And accepting that something happened, or things were the way they were and they can't be changed, is the big step forward. But acceptance doesn't mean it's okay. It just means it's the truth. You can't fight reality.
Yeah, exactly.
And I think that's what we try and do.
Yeah, sorry, son. There's a lot of comfort wherever you are and whatever you're doing with your life, in just accepting that things are meant to be a particular way, and the, you know, instead of ruminating over why has this happened to me, that this is how it is. Everything's as it's meant to be, and then you can take some element of peace from it. I think we tend to either live in the past or the future. And my MO was typically living in the future. Oh, it'll be all right when. I've got a different job. It'll be all right when the kids are a bit older and they sleep. It'll be all right when we've moved house or whatever. And you're wishing your life away. And people would always say to me, oh, your kids grow up so fast, you'll make the most of it. And when I was drinking, I'm thinking, well, how can I? It's so hard being a parent. But what I didn't realize was I was making it so much more difficult for myself by drinking, because of the way that alcohol works with the brain and body. So that whole thing about the past and the future, where when I was training with Annie and I'm thinking about my business and what I want to do with my business, the reason I named it, so it's called Pump Up the Present, a bit like Pump Up the Jam or Pump Up the Volume. So I'm going back to my 80s heyday.
Wasn't it?
Yeah. But the idea is that the present is all we have. So what we're doing now, this is all we have. This is what you experience. So you need to inflate it and get it to be the best that it can possibly be, because this is all that you've got to enjoy. Like you can think fondly of your memories and you can look forward to things in the future, but this is what you're experiencing. So why not make it the best that it can possibly be? Because living in the future for me was just causing a lot of anxiety, and I've got everything that I need now. Any state that I want to be in emotionally is available to me now, and I can access any of that by my thinking.
Yeah, that's the thing, isn't it? And I think what a lot of people do, and that I encounter through my work, is they will distract themselves. You mentioned like buying a new house, I would focus on a new car, for example, and I've got to have that. I'll be happy when I've got that.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
then actually there is a spike of happiness, but you soon just go back to exactly where you were before. But all the time it was diverting my attention and just keeping me away from ever being at peace and acceptance of the stuff, just in the, like, being in the now and dealing with the things that I needed to look at from my past.
Yeah, exactly.
But I agree that,
Exactly.
and mindfulness and yoga and all those practices, you know, a lot of people kind of stay away from or sort of shy away from them. But you know, when you actually can just take some time, and it doesn't have to be hours and hours. You don't have to turn into a sort of fully trained Buddhist monk or anything like that. Just there's apps that you can do this stuff with. It's amazing. It's life changing.
It is, and the two things that I get all of my clients to do, get them into a habit of is journaling and meditation. Because if you
Yeah,
only do those two things, then fairly quickly you will see a massive change in your life. And as you say, it doesn't have to be complicated, it doesn't have to be long, it doesn't have to be sitting on a cushion for an hour. It can be building up from 2 minutes to 5 minutes to 10 minutes over a
exactly.
period of time. And there are so many good resources for making things like meditation accessible. So Dan Harris is a great one with his meditation for fidgety skeptics, and Emily Fletcher's Stress Less, Accomplish More. I found that really helpful because it just explains, a bit like This Naked Mind explains how alcohol works. Her book tells you how meditation works and why meditation works. And if you know why and how, then you're more likely to then do it. And she also gives practical examples too. So yeah, there's lots of entry points, I think, which possibly, you know, weren't around some
Yeah,
time ago. So we're very lucky in that respect. But yeah, it's you've kind of, I think you've got to remove the veil of alcohol first to have the
yeah.
clarity to see this stuff.
That's, and the same with looking at things like past trauma and where certain feelings might be linked to in your past. I don't believe you can do that until you are sort of more mentally stable and clearer headed.
Yeah,
I think
absolutely.
all
Yeah,
of that, it's like the second phase of growth.
it is, and it's kind of weird when it happens, because certainly the trauma from my past, like I honestly, when I started to remember these things, I knew they'd happened, but I honestly hadn't thought about them for a lot of years, over 20 years. So it can be quite unsettling. But I think this
Yeah,
is why having a coach or being part of a community, being in some kind of a program is helpful, because yes, you can do something like the alcohol experiment. But then what? Because
oh
when
yeah,
you've removed alcohol, there's other stuff there, and we all need somebody to point us in the right direction, to guide us, to shortcut things for us, to make it faster, to get the results that we want. So you know, one of the things I'm working on now is a small group coaching program, so that when people have been through the alcohol experiment, or they've been through my Cambridge alcohol experiment, that they can then move on to a small group coaching program where they get a lot of interaction with me, but then that community of the group. So as they move forward into their
brilliant.
alcohol-free life, they've got those touch points to navigate the things that come up, because everybody's stories are going to be different, but there are so many similarities, as we know. And the joys of group coaching are, quite often somebody will ask something or bring something up that then triggers something for somebody
Yeah,
else, or that you hadn't even realized was there.
yeah, exactly. And people share their experiences that often help others. And I found it to
Yeah.
be very, very powerful. Probably in some respects more so than one-to-one coaching in some regards.
Yeah, it's interesting to see how some people just accelerate through it. So I wanted to test doing an in-person alcohol experiment, which is kind of off the cards with COVID, but nevertheless, I've set up the Cambridge alcohol experiment so that in the future, that can be an in-person event and an
Brilliant.
in-person program. And that couples all of the best things about the alcohol experiment from This Naked Mind, but combines it with yoga practice and teaching things like not just a physical practice, but meditation, mindfulness, pranayama, different breathwork exercises. And I've got my first cohort going through that now, online on Zoom. And it's just phenomenal, like to see how it's all women at the moment, and the way that they've bonded together, the things that they've shared, the way that they've been able to help each other. It's just been incredible. So I love doing my one-to-one business, I really do. But this is just another dimension of, and actually combining the two. I've got some of my one-to-one clients who I see through my regular coaching programs. I'll see them once a week, but then they're also in the group coaching program.
Right, yeah.
You plug both things together, and to see the progress that they've made, it is just unbelievable.
It's just
great.
Yeah, best of both worlds. But I'm with I still do therapy now, because I still get so much out of it and learn. It even helps me with my coaching, some of the things I pick up. But the guy I do it with, he does his one-to-one therapy, and then he's got a men's group that is 6 of us, and I do that on Zoom as well. And I just find it so helpful, so useful, and they feel like friends and almost like brothers in many respects. And that's been so awesome.
Yeah. But it's sort of, sorry, I was just going to say, so you've just got to get to that point where you're willing to invest in yourself.
Yes.
Because if you are, then the development that's ahead of you, I mean, that leads to untold happiness and abundance in your life. But you have to take that first step. You have to have that leap of faith of, I'm going to invest money and time in me. But what it then opens up, it can just be astounding.
And I think that first step, the point that you need to take that first step, like in your case, it was when you walked out of that doctor's surgery with your head, that was the moment that internal conflict started to happen, where I'm questioning my drinking all of a sudden, and that's painful. You don't want to stay there for too long.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I'll make sure that your website is on the screen. So although we can't see it now, it will be if you're watching this back. So where else can people find you, Ellie?
I'm on Facebook and Instagram. So my handle is @PumpUpThePresent. So you can find me on there. On my website, you can sign up to my mailing list. So then you'll be first to hear about the different programs that I've got coming up. And you can also register your interest for the Cambridge Alcohol Experiment there too. So I tend to work with a lot of mums, so breastfeeding mums and mums with young kids. But I really like working with people that are sort of hugely driven and ambitious, and just have that feeling that I had, that they're not fulfilling their potential.
Yeah.
And that's where coaching can be so effective in helping people to get to the things that they need to then release them and move them forward in their lives.
Yeah, and become the real, true, fulfilled, happy version of themselves. Yeah, I think I was like that. I would have been a good client for you. I really would have been. Well, I'll make sure all your details, if you're watching on YouTube, they'll be in the description and on the screen, and on Instagram, you'll just be able to see them on the screen. And I'll tag Ellie in it as well, so you can connect with her. But you're doing some amazing work, and thank you so much for coming on and sharing your story and what you're doing. It's just wonderful.
Oh no, thank you for having me. It's so nice to sort of come full circle, having started in the alcohol experiment where you were coaching, and then to now, like as I'm now currently coaching it myself. It's just shows the power of change. It
does. Absolutely. It's such a wonderful story, and I'm sure it's going to inspire many, many people. Thanks, Ellie.
Thank you so much. Take care.